Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to map out the golf swing in sections to make it easier to digest, first of all. Second of all, when you practice, you could use this as a reasonable comparison of what you're doing, especially if you film your swing. Now, this golfer, a lot of you probably never heard of, Mac O'Grady. He won twice on the tour and was not a good ball striker. He was an extraordinary ball striker. And his swing produced a pretty neutral ball flight, meaning not a lot of curvature in either direction unless he wanted to, but stock swing, pretty straight-ish golf shots, very solid, lots of power. And the other reason I'm using his swing is because there's no real extravagant movements, any strange contortions to the wrists, the arms, or how the body rotates and tilts. So in that regard, we can call this a pretty simple model of a golf swing. It doesn't matter if you're male or female, this is still a great model, okay? So this first video, we're going to break it down into sections. Some of you have heard this before. 10 positions in the golf swing. Instead of saying the word position, we're just going to call it P, P1, or position 1 is address. We're going to go P1 to P2 in this video from both views. We'll start with the target view. Now you can see I've drawn a line through the shaft, up through the body. That's just a reference line for the plane of the golf club at address. We're going to use that. We're going to get him moving from P1 to P2. So P2 is when the shaft is about parallel to the ground in the backswing. So I'd say that's a pretty good indication of parallel to the ground from this view. What are some highlights we can look at? Well, first of all, the hips have barely rotated, but the chest has started to rotate. The right elbow is folded in towards the center line of the body from the side view. Left arm is pointing basically towards the midpoint of the shoe or beginning of the toes. Shoulders have already started to turn on a slight inclination to the ground. That's very important. We look at the right wrist is slightly bent backwards, and the club face is angled towards the golf ball in a reasonable amount. Or you could say the face of the golf club is really close to matching the spine. Okay. Now this section of the swing is very important because it sets up the brain to start to get the slight hinge in the wrist, the slight hinge in the right elbow, the proper tilts in the body, and it starts to set the shaft, as you can see, or the sweet spot of the club pretty much exactly through that inclination or swing plane that he's starting on. And that gives the brain a good roadmap of where the club needs to be at P6, which we'll get to in another video. And then another little thing I'll show you if you're watching your own swing, if we put a line kind of marking the outside edge of the right hand, and we get him to P2. So the hands don't start to move very far out away from the toe line. They actually, in this particular model, seem to have moved straight back as far as this kind of vertical line where they're started on. Some of you take the hands too far away from the body. A lot of people do that. Very few people take the hands too far interior too quickly. But again, this is what I call a plain vanilla golf swing. Nothing real weird going on. And so we would use those checkpoints. When the shaft gets parallel to the ground, if he dropped that shaft out of his fingertips, it'd probably fall right over his toes. Club face angle points towards the ball. Right wrist is bent backwards. Right elbow is retracted into the body. Left arm kind of points towards the left foot, and the shoulders are turning on a tilt. Okay, that's a lot to absorb, but again, if you want to build a good golf swing, there's not many ways to do it other than the way most people try to do it, which is get a few thoughts or ideas, go to the range, hit balls, never film, never verify if they're making any particular movements in the body that they're trying to, and just hit a lot of golf balls and kind of hope that the shots start getting better. And that's the longest way that I can think of to build a good golf swing. Okay, so keep that in mind. The detail is there because it's necessary. If you want to create a good golf swing, you have to know these basic checkpoints and what to look for. And it may sound like a lot of work, But if you set yourself in front of a mirror instead of hitting a lot of golf balls and start to watch what you're doing and use this video and pause it and replay and watch it again and compare and contrast, you can start to do this much faster in a mirror, because then your eyeballs are telling you if you're doing it right, which creates feels in your body, which is much faster than trying to go to the range and hit a ball at full speed and hope you're doing what you're trying to do. Okay. Other things we might notice, just general ideas about setup. Arms kind of hang, or hands kind of hang underneath the shoulders. That can vary from player to player a small amount, but that's pretty standard these days. The hands with an iron are not way out underneath the nose. And you'll see mild knee flex, forward bend from the waist, etc. And we'll just kind of leave that at that. Front view. Both feet are flared some amount. Ball position, we're not sure what club he's swinging, but I'd estimate a 7 or a 6 iron. Ball is kind of mid stance on this particular swing. Doesn't mean that's locked in stone. Some players can play the ball a little bit more forward. If you're a high handicap player, you may play the ball one ball back from that position with an iron, but I'd say that's pretty standard. We look at the shaft, it is leaned forward. If the shaft kept going through the body, it kind of pointed the outside edge of the left shoulder. That is not too much forward shaft lean. Knees look fairly normal, not splayed apart, not pinched in. Arms form a triangle. Not a great deal of tilt in the shoulders, just a little bit, because the right hand's lower in the club than the left. Head centered in between the feet. Okay. Now let's go P1 to P2 from the face view. So a checkpoint there would be shoulders have started to turn on a tilt, as you saw from the other view. Shaft's about parallel to the ground. And the hands are slightly outside the right thigh, or you could say the back of the left hand's kind of on the right foot, kind of middle of the right foot. Okay. Again, from that perspective, you go, there's not a lot that I need to learn other than just watching this and going, there's nothing strange going on. Just a little bit of turn, a little bit of back hinge in the right wrist, and a little bit of fold in the elbow towards the body. Other thing I forgot to tell you, but I'll go back over it pretty quick. Most of you, well, not most of you, but a fair percentage of you have a grip that's too weak. If we draw a line across the back of the hand, that's going to point somewhere near right side of the body. Line across the right hand. If they converged, eventually they'd probably meet somewhere near the right shoulder. You can also see one knuckle, two knuckles, if I can get rid of these lines. About a 2 to 3 knuckle grip on the left hand, and that's a good baseline grip as well. So let's consider these parts of the swing, or these pieces that make up that part P1 to P2, and let's get some good practice in front of a mirror, okay?